some positive leftist news with Chill Goblin. Right on.
Hello there, good morning, good evening, and goodness gracious, great balls of fire. My name's Chill Goblin, and I'm here as a new member of Positive Leftist News, which has expanded their team to include people like me. Well, as a leftist, it can be hard to stay positive, which is why our team's gone through the trouble of hunting down the most uplifting news stories from the left end of the political spectrum. Let's get into those stories now. This settler colonial state is going to have to settle for less because a group of 10 Native American tribes on California's northern coast are reclaiming part of their homelands. The area includes ancient redwoods that have stood throughout the thousands of years that the tribes have been stewarding the territory. Save the Redwoods League, a non-profit conservation group, announced Tuesday that it is transferring more than 500 acres, 202 hectares, on the Lost Coast to the Intertribal Sinkyone Wilderness Council. The tribes will be responsible for protecting the land, dubbed Fish Run Place in the Sinkyone language. Priscilla Hunter, the chair of the Sinkyone Council, said it is fitting that they'll be caretakers of the land where her people were removed or forced to flee before the forest was largely stripped for timber. It's a real blessing, said Hunter of the Coyote Valley Band of Pomo Indians. It's like a healing for our ancestors. I know our ancestors are happy. This was given to us to protect. Slowly but surely, these settler capitalist states will fall. It's land back here and everywhere. As if to prove my point, Indigenous peoples across Ecuador celebrated this month after a historic ruling by the country's highest court. After ruling that an Indigenous community's right to free, prior and informed consultation was violated by oil projects, the court called for stronger protections to guarantee Indigenous rights to decide on extractive projects in their territories. The judges said Indigenous peoples must not only be consulted about extractive projects on or near their territory, but they must also give their consent for any projects to go forward. The ruling will immediately affect oil and mining projects across the country. This has been very big news, very important for the community, for all of us who have been on this path, said Nixon Andy from the Indigenous Kofan community of Sinango in Ecuador's northern Amazon rainforest. The Constitutional Court ratified that the state has to listen to us, so this sets a very important precedent for us and for the whole Indigenous world because our voices are not always listened to. And this demonstration is a spicy meatball. Italy is at it again, with demonstrations in more than 40 cities this month, this time led by students. In late January, students mobilized rallies in solidarity with a student who died during an internship at an engineering firm, and another who was the victim of a road accident in a training internship. The rallying students were supported by trade unions and other working-class organizations, for example, GKN, which took to the streets with the students in Florence. We reported on the major GKN-led general strike in Florence back in September, and it's fantastic to see their solidarity with striking youth. Students faced police brutality and repression during this first wave of protests on January 28th, where cops charged them with batons. A week later, thousands of students mobilized in multiple cities again to protest this police violence, to protest in-person final exams, and to demand major reforms, including the abolition of school-work alternation programs, which are highly exploitative and have led to the deaths of 2 students. The students gathered to protest a third time on February 18th, again across 40 cities. The protests were called by various student organizations such as the Middle Students Network, the Student Union, the Communist Youth Front, and the Alternative Student Opposition. Students are railing against Mario Draghi and calling for the resignation of Education Minister Patrizio Bianchi. Draghi agreed to meet with student representatives, but mobilizations are set to continue until their demands are met. Solidarieta. And Argentina tells a predatory neoliberalizing arm of the US foreign policy to go IMF themselves. Thousands marched in the streets of Argentina's capital to protest against a loan repayment deal with the International Monetary Fund, fearing the economic fallout on their lives. In front of the presidential palace, they demanded that the state prioritize the people and not the IMF. They say the record $57 billion loan the state took out in 2018 should not be paid back until the country recovers from the COVID-19 pandemic. The IMF is a predatory institution that maintains neoliberal hegemony around the world. Solidarity with Argentinians rightfully standing up and saying, no más. Call it Che Gaventilatera if you like, or maybe you could try and think of something better. But as the unconscionable US war machine continues to try and crush Cuba under sanctions and an embargo in the midst of a pandemic, Cuba has been unable to buy critical ventilator parts. Just as they've done throughout the entirety of the embargo, they went ahead and built them themselves. They built 250 copies of an open source design from MIT after adapting it for Cuban conditions, and then built another 250 copies of a design from UCL in the UK. Open source technology can be a major form of solidarity and can inspire true communal innovation, not the bereft form of capitalist innovation that figures out how to make things break quicker. We reported in previous episodes about the extremely effective vaccine Cuba has developed as well, which it has shared with other countries that have been marginalized by the capitalist West, addressing vaccine inequity and spiting the imperialists. We love to see it. Speaking of which, we can chalk up another victory over a problem that wouldn't exist in a just world. Vaccine inequity is one of the greatest injustices of this pandemic, with only 10% of people in low and middle income countries fully vaccinated. Happily, researchers at a South African biotechnology company have nearly completed the process of reproducing Moderna's mRNA vaccine without Moderna's involvement. The company, Afrigen Biologics and Vaccines, in Cape Town, has so far made only microliters of the vaccine, but it is a major achievement for an initiative of the World Health Organization Technology Transfer Hub meant to build capacity for vaccine manufacturing in low and middle income countries. Pfizer and Moderna have sent more than 70% of their doses to wealthy nations, a cool and normal thing that is in no way the sign of a broken world. We keep things light around here. Meanwhile, millions of doses purchased by or promised to low and middle income countries have been delayed. Many steps remain before the vaccine can be distributed to people in Africa and beyond, but it is a step towards a more globally distributed vaccine. And one ant may not be able to stop evictions, but 10 ants can. Thanks to a massive pressure and tenant organizing campaign spearheaded by Alleghany's Abolition, Landmark Properties was forced to withdraw 25 eviction filings in State College, Pennsylvania. The landlord firm was seeking to evict 28 student tenants in the dead of winter and in the middle of a pandemic, showing no concern for the health and safety of the tenants. Alleghany's Abolition wrote, "This is a win not only for tenants, but for community organizing in Centre County. Our work of organizing tenants to fight against evictions has put a spotlight on the daily violence that landlords like Landmark Properties hope to keep hidden. We put them on watch, and through community pressure, Landmark Properties called off these evictions. It's a good day to see landlords afraid of tenant power." 3 people remain at risk of eviction in one of the buildings, so the solidarity continues. Who keeps us housed? We keep us housed. And you might find this electricity-related news shocking, but socialist Xiomara Castro, no relation, took office in Honduras late last month and promised free electricity for the country's poorest. She said, "I order that more than 1 million families living in poverty and which consume less than 150 kilowatts per month, beginning today, will no longer pay the energy consumption bill. Electricity will be free in their homes. High consumers will subsidize the energy costs for the poor in the country." Castro is the first woman president in Honduras, and her election ended the right-wing dictatorship installed by a Western-backed coup in 2009. And this bus's next stop is fair pay. Workers at the Solaris bus and coach company in Poland began a general strike this month. The protesters want a PLN 800 gross salary increase for each employee. PLN for PLN, we like it. The Confederation of Work organized an online fundraiser for employees. Trade unionists wrote, "A company that records huge profits, over 100 million złote for the past year, wants workers with 15 years of experience to agree to rates only slightly exceeding PLN 3,000 per hand. We can no longer accept it. The employer's response to our actions is a threat, collecting our salaries for the next few days. That is why we decided to launch this fundraiser. We need mobilization and social support." Now, they've raised tens of thousands of złote and are seeing support from other trade unions. Solidarity with workers fighting for what they deserve. And in more news with Polish words for me to mispronounce, in another major strike in Poland, workers at Białystok in Białystok won raises of 300 złote after a 9-day strike. The workers were fighting for a 600 zloty raise, but signed this agreement as part of a longer-term strategy. The company was trying to intimidate the workers by saying they would close the Bial site and dismiss all 45 workers. The chairman of the strike committee said that they would accept the compromise raise amounts to maintain employment at the site, and will begin wage negotiations again after the first quarter of 2022. The trade union movement in Poland is gaining strength. A recent survey shows that 46% of Poles have a positive attitude to trade union activity, an increase of 10 percentage points since 2 years earlier. In the midst of the Great Resignation, workers everywhere are coming to realize that the union makes us strong. Winning themselves an extra day of waffles and chocolate and presumably other things, workers in Belgium will soon be able to choose a 4-day work week and have the right to turn off work devices and ignore work-related messages after hours without fear of reprisal. Workers in the gig economy will also receive stronger legal protections under the new rules, while full-time employees will be able to work flexible schedules on demand. Unfortunately, the 4-day plan seems to maintain the 38-hour work week and extend the working days in the condensed period, which is less than ideal and can hopefully be challenged. The false urgency and breakneck pace of capitalist production is entirely self-imposed and unnecessary. Here's to reduced labor hours and better work-life balance for all. And could men-at-arms soon be renamed men-at-feet? Well, Rihanna Pratchett, the daughter of author Terry Pratchett, has endorsed the use of the Vimes Boots Index by anti-poverty campaigner Jack Monroe. In a major victory this month, the people turning knobs at the Office of National Statistics will now adopt the index and change the way that they collect and report on the cost of food. Like carrots. The index seeks to establish the differing effect that price increases have on the poor, to challenge the assumption that inflation affects all people equally. The index is named in honor of Pratchett's creation, Sam Vimes, the only good cop, who, in the Discworld novel Men at Arms, lays out his theory. The Sam Vimes Boots theory of socio-economic unfairness, the rich can become and stay rich by spending less. A poor person can only afford cheap boots that end up falling apart quickly while walking across detritus, whereas a rich person can stay cheery and invest in boots which will last a decade. The poor end up buying more pairs of boots for a larger total sum than the rich person. Indeed, there is a very high cost of being poor, and Jack Monroe plans to work to compile this new index, which she wrote will document the disappearance of the budget lines and the insidiously creeping prices of the most basic versions of essential items at the supermarket, and serve as an irrefutable snapshot of the reality experienced by millions of people. In conclusion, Captain Angua. You've heard of Bossa Nova, but how about Girl Bossa Nova? Brazil's women's groups, along with Afro-Brazilian and LGBTQ+ movements and other organizations like the Landless Peasant Movement, are organizing for greater democracy in Brazil. At a congress called Resistance and the Passage to Hope, the Brazilian Workers' Party laid out plans to create thousands of neighborhood political organizing committees in urban peripheries and poor areas to improve dialogue between the party and the country's working class base, and protect against future coup attempts. One leader stated, "We're calling them popular committees. We want the people to be organized. We know that democracy in Brazil is very limited, not just now, but in past moments too. If this wasn't there, there wouldn't have been such a coup against President Dilma, and Lula wouldn't have been imprisoned." And putting the over into overdosing on intravenous drugs, we are happy to report that since our coverage of the opening of the first safe injection sites in the US in New York City in December, the sites have successfully reversed over 100 overdoses in just 2 months. Overdoses claimed over 2,000 lives in 2020. The success of this program will hopefully act as yet more evidence on the efficacy of safe injection sites. And it looks like the truckle fucks may soon be heading home. Canada's so-called Freedom Convoy may have made international news, but what may not be as known was the community response to the astroturfed white nationalist tantrum. On Sunday the 13th, fed-up Ottawans took to the streets and blocked convoyers from converging on Parliament Hill at Riverside Drive. A dog-walking group organized the blockade, stopping 25 vehicles and the chuds within from linking up with the petty bourgeois demonstration. As news of the counter-demonstration spread, hundreds of Ottawans turned out to reinforce the action. After stopping the convoyers for hours, Ottawans allowed them to leave on the condition that they remove all flags and insignia from their vehicles. Chants of "Don't come back" rang out as the Chuds left with their tails between their legs. Bravo, Ottawans! Shout out to comrades in Vancouver, Winnipeg, and Montreal who similarly shut down the Flu Trucks Clan. And also shout out to whoever came up with Flu Trucks Clan. That's an all-time great hashtag. Love it. The rarely seen triple entendre. Well done. And according to my app, justice is on its way. Gig workers brought a powerful message to Seattle city leaders this month. That message took the form of 400 to-go bags, including a 6-foot-tall bag dropped off at City Hall by gig workers from apps such as DoorDash, Instacart, and Shipt. The workers tagged the bags with receipts that show the actual amount a driver was paid for a delivery. Some receipts showed negative amounts, indicating that the driver lost money taking the gig. Now, this reporter's personal opinion is, what the H? How is that allowed to happen? App-based delivery services want the benefits of having workers without giving any of the benefits that we as a culture have decided workers deserve, said Mikey Pullman, a driver with DoorDash. It's the city council's job to protect the people that live here. Now, the gig workers want a suite of basic workers' rights, everything from bathroom access to protection against discrimination. But their first priority for the city council is a minimum payment ordinance, which would ensure minimum wage plus expenses with a per minute and per mile floor for the engaged time needed to perform each service. The gig economy, far from being the pinnacle of freedom it's made out to be, is rife with dystopian, hyper-capitalist exploitation. Solidarity with everyone in the gig economy fighting for basic workers' rights. I rate this direct action 5 stars. And in news, PLN top brass has repeatedly told me has nothing to do with K-pop. On February 9th, Black and Pink National, a prison abolitionist organization dedicated to abolishing the criminal punishment system and liberating LGBTQ+ people and people living with HIV/AIDS who are affected by that system, announced the formation of the Black and Pink Union. The name of the organization was chosen to represent the black flag of anarchism and the power of queer politics and experience. The mission of the Black and Pink Union is to safeguard social and economic justice in our workplace using the values of our organization. Black and Pink National's executive director, Dominique Morgan, voluntarily recognized the union. A hearty "Boombaya" to all our Black and Pink comrades. And the bones in this museum might not belong to dinosaurs. The charity Queer Britain achieved its goal this month by securing a physical home in London for the UK's first national LGBTQ+ museum. The museum will celebrate, uplift, and explore LGBTQ+ histories, people, and ideas. And Jamuj, a Queer Britain trustee, said, "The UK is finally getting the LGBTQ+ museum it deserves to reflect and celebrate all our exciting and wildly diverse communities, whatever their sexualities, gender identities, backgrounds, ability, or heritage. Community lives in unity." And Turf Island may slowly be transforming into just regular island. British trans-affirming doctor Adrian Harrop has finally been cleared by a tribunal to continue practicing medicine. The doctor had faced a medical practitioners tribunal service hearing after a 1-month suspension for sending so-called offensive tweets to people who opposed his pro-trans rights stance. He states that he is relieved to be able to return to his work and is now more committed than ever before to making sure trans people can access healthcare. And in fantastic news for the Kiwier community, New Zealand legislation banning conversion therapy has passed its final reading in Parliament with almost unanimous support from MPs. Conversion therapy involves harmful attempts to change a person's sexual orientation or gender despite zero scientific basis for it. Deputy Prime Minister Grant Robertson spoke on how this legislation rights a wrong, a hurtful, insidious, destructive wrong. But it also sends a message of love, support, and affirmation to all in the rainbow communities. Never say Netherlands won't do the same, to paraphrase the bard, Justin Bieber. That's right, MPs in the Netherlands have also proposed a bill to outlaw conversion therapy. People offering such therapy for gay and transgender people would face fines of up to €22,500 and up to 1-year prison sentences under a bill being put before the Dutch Parliament. Astrid Oosenbrug, chair of the LGBT rights group COC Netherlands, spoke highly of the new bill, stating, "It's not an illness to be who you are, and nobody should let themselves be persuaded that they need to be cured. LGBTI conversion is a fairy tale that destroys people." Let's hope that's one fairy tale that won't be getting a Disney adaptation anytime soon. And in furry news, YIF just might stand for Yes, It's Flippin' Fantastic. Homophobic Mayor Gene McGee of Ridgeland, Mississippi, tried to ban LGBTQ+ books from the Madison County Library system by withholding $110,000 of funding until they got rid of what he referred to as homosexual materials. Tanya Johnson, executive director of the county's library system, said that withholding this money, even temporarily, would have a significant impact on services that are available and potentially affect their ability to pay library employees. But fear not, furries have come to the rescue. After the mayor announced his intent to vor all books with queer themes, the library began an online fundraiser with the goal of raising just $2,500. When furries on Twitter first came across this fundraiser, it hadn't raised a single dollar, but that soon changed when the anthropomorphic community securely nodded itself onto the cause. A furry called Soatok tweeted, "We interrupt your usual program of shitposts, memes, and cute fursuits to bring you something with real-world impact." After being amplified by the rest of the community, the furries used their skills with inflation to really blow up that fundraiser number, raising tens of thousands of plump dollars. The library will not be getting rid of the books. Mayor McGee, who, if this reporter had to guess, would probably have an albino ferret fursona, has since blocked Soatok on Twitter. Sorry if I made this one weird. Moving on, Colombia can green wave goodbye to one of its more patriarchal laws this month. Colombia has decriminalized abortion during the first 24 weeks of pregnancy, adding to a recent string of legal victories for reproductive rights in Latin America. The South American country's Constitutional Court ruled 5-4 to decriminalize the procedure. The decision follows a series of rulings in Mexico and Argentina that lower barriers to abortion. Congratulations to everyone fighting for reproductive rights in Colombia and around the world. And this is not a drill, and especially in Los Angeles, it won't be. After years of organizing, Stand LA, which stands for Standing Together Against Neighborhood Drilling, has successfully pressured the Los Angeles City Council to unanimously approve a ban on all new oil and gas drilling in the city and to provide a just transition for workers into the green energy sector. The city currently has more than 5,200 oil and gas wells, making it one of the largest urban oil fields in the U.S. Even wells no longer in use still have negative impacts on people's health and the environment through their toxic gas emissions, disproportionately impacting poorer communities. The city will now work towards phasing out and shutting down all of those wells. One council member, Paul Koretz, aptly stated, "This effort is about 100 years overdue, and it is about time." And I promise I'm not fracking with you here, but 2 years after the UK's de facto ban on fracking, the fracking company Cadrilla will permanently plug and abandon its 2 shale wells in Lancashire, England, drawing to a close Britain's failed fracking industry. Greenpeace UK's head of climate, Kate Blagojevich, ridiculed the false promises of the fracking industry. Fracking was going to be the solution to our energy problems. Years later, all this industry has given us are a couple of holes in a muddy field and some minor earthquakes. The ban on fracking in 2019 was the result of years of sustained protests from climate campaigners and local activists. And in news that should make you happy if your name is anything except for Elon Musk, on the 10th of February, eco-activists set up tents in central Belgrade, Serbia, to demand a ban on lithium mining in the Balkan country. The camp is set up in a park outside the Serbian presidential building, and activists have pledged to remain there until lithium mining is banned. The tent protest is meant to symbolize how people will be forced to leave their homes and villages wherever mines open in Serbia. This protest is part of a larger Serbian environmental movement that has been ramping up ahead of April elections. On the same day, hundreds of people also rallied outside President Alexander Vucic's headquarters before marching toward the government building. "We have one clear demand, a law which should forbid exploring borate and lithium," said activist Savo Manojlovic of the Kreni Prameni, or Go Change group. While lithium is considered a key metal in the renewable energy transition, this transition must be just and led by the people for the people. We must not allow lithium mining to set off new rounds of neo-colonial exploitation and leave sacrifice zones in its wake. And two things minors should stay away from: my secret lewd Twitter account and Honduran rivers. 8 Honduran land protectors who had been held on remand for 2.5 years for trying to protect a river in a national park were ordered to be released by the Honduran Supreme Court. The judge who sentenced the men was found to have violated due process by presiding on cases outside her jurisdiction. As a result, the charges will be annulled and the men are to be freed. The land protectors were defending their community from the operations of an open-pit mine in Tocoa, owned by one of the country's richest and most powerful families, which was sanctioned inside of a protected national park and, of course, without community consultation. Contaminants from the mine have poisoned rivers that thousands of Hondurans rely on. Honduras remains one of the most dangerous countries in the world for environmental activists, but the people are not giving up. Juana Zuniga, partner of Jose Albino Cedillo, who was among the 6 found guilty, said, "Our struggle will continue until the national park is free from mining and environmental destruction." And always great to see bad things happening to one of Canada's worst Jasons. 5 environmental organizations, Environmental Defense, West Coast Environmental Law, Stand Earth, Dogwood, and the Wilderness Committee have followed through on a threat to sue right-wing Alberta Premier Jason Kenney and the local government for defamation, as they accuse these environmental groups of spreading misinformation about Alberta's energy industry. "There's a line that Kenney crossed," said Paul Champ, lawyer for the environmentalists. "If you don't hold him accountable on something like this, there's really no limits for him. Alberta is the home of the tar sands, the world's dirtiest energy project that needs to be kept in the ground." And I've heard of an oil slick, but an oil not so slick? A court in Argentina has issued an injunction suspending oil exploration in 3 maritime areas off the Atlantic coast of Buenos Aires province and ordering environmental impact studies to be carried out. Environmental organizations have been protesting against exploration off the coastline's beaches, with thousands of people rallying along Mar del Plata's beaches and across other coastal cities in Argentina in January. The injunction will remain in place until a substantive ruling on the issue is handed down. Congratulations to this powerful movement. And I'll be completely real with you, this one isn't entirely relevant to the environment and animal liberation section, but cutest news gets saved for the end, and this news is cute as heck. Starbucks Workers United's official mascot is Jorts the cat. Jorts and friends have been celebrating as a tidal wave of Starbucks unionizations swept the US this month. Comrades, if you have good news from the current month, please send your stories to totalliberationpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you to Javi for the positive news jams. Thank you to Halcyon for the positive news background. Thank you to Mexi, Catherine, and Jacob for the script writing. Thank you to James for editing this video. That's not me, that's a different James. Thank you also to myself for doing this part. We are looking to expand our team and therefore our Patreon, so if you'd like to become a sustaining member, please go to patreon.com/positiveleftistnews, or you can give us a one-time tip or donation. The link is in the description box below. Chill Goblin, PLN News, Toronto.
Sometimes